So let's talk about AWS Resource Access Manager or RAM. So you're going to share AWS resources that you own with other AWS accounts. And with this, you can do it from any account or just accounts within your organization. This is allowing you to avoid the resource duplication. So what can you share with RAM? You can share VPC subnets, for example, which is very helpful and one of the best use cases for RAM, which allows you to have all the resources launched within the same subnets. And all these things, all these subnets then must be from the same AWS organizations. You cannot share security groups though, and you cannot share the default VPC. The participants can manage their own resources within the subnets, but the participants cannot view, modify, or delete resources that belong to other participants or the owner. So they only share the networking really. You can also share a transit gateway or Route 53 resolver rules and DNS firewall rule groups and so on, or license manager configurations. There's other stuff you can share. I'm just going to do a list. So Aura DB cluster, ACM private authority, certificate authority, code build projects, EC2 dedicated hosts, capacity reservations, glue catalog, database and table, network firewall policies, resource groups, system manager, system incidents, outposts, and the list goes on and on and on, and it will not update it, okay? But one of the most important use case from an exam perspective for Resource Access Manager is for the VPC. So in this example, we have a VPC, and there's a VPC owner, and it has a private subnet. But this VPC is going to be shared with account 1 and account 2. So each account is going to be responsible for its own resources, okay? They cannot view and modify or delete other resources in other accounts. So for example, if I deploy an EC2 instance and ALB in account 1, then an account 2 will have an EC2 instance. They can communicate with one another, but they cannot view each other, okay? Because they are in separate accounts. And then your database may sit in a private subnet of the VPC owner, and so network is shared. That means that all these things can talk to each other, and these applications can access each other using private IPs. So this avoids the needs, for example, to do a VPC peering. Now, security group can also be referenced across accounts for maximum security, which is very helpful. Now, the use cases for this is that applications within the same trust boundaries can be deployed within the same VPC, and that will simplify your network. And if you have applications with a high degree of interconnectivity, yet again, you will have a much simplified network setup because you only have one VPC. And so by default, any application deployed within it can talk with each other. Another example of what can be shared by Resource Access Manager is a managed prefix list. So what is a managed prefix list? Well, it is a set of one or more CIDR blocks. And it makes it easier to maintain and configure security group rules and root tables. So here's an example. Account A has a prefix list, and in it you have the CIDR 1, CIDR 2, CIDR 3. And these are set of rules, for example, that represent your internal network of your company. And say you want to apply these rules, these prefixes to many different security groups. So instead of having them all in all security groups, what you do is that you create a prefix list, and then that prefix list can be referenced by a security group. So on top of it, this can be shared. So if they're shared using RAM to another account, then a security group inbound rules can look as simple as this, where you say, well, SSH is allowed on port 22 from the source prefix list A. And so that if you are using, for example, your own customer managed prefix list, then you define the CIDRs, and then you can share it with other accounts or organizations, and then you can modify them. And if you modify your prefix list, automatically all the security groups that were leveraging that prefix list or all the root tables that were leveraging that prefix list are going to be updated at the same time, which gives you a central management of your prefixes and so on. You also have a second kind of prefix list, which is the AWS managed prefix list. So this time the CIDRs are defined by AWS for their own services, and you cannot create, modify, share, or delete them, but I want you to know about them in this slide anyway. Something else you can share with Resource Access Manager is the Route 53 outbound resolver. So this allows you to scale your forwarding rules to your DNS in case you have a hybrid setup and you have multiple accounts and multiple VPC. So the idea is that in your main account, you will define the resolver rule for Route 53. So you have your forwarding rules that have the domain names that you want and the target IPs. And then you would share those with other accounts so that after you share it, the other account accepts it. Then they can be associated with other VPC, and any other VPC that have these rules can then resolve the domain names you've specified. So this allows you to have a centrally managed resolver rules for your DNS. Okay, so that's it for Resource Access Manager. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture.